Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
So I welcome you to a new day. I welcome you to Tuesday. I welcome you to another exciting edition. You are listening to MFM 97.3, where we set the agenda and project the truth. And don't forget, you can watch us live on Facebook at MFM 97.3. And as you're watching us, do well to like, comment, and share. And don't forget, this program is in form of 3 segments. The first segment is the weather forecast reports of 3 major cities in Nigeria: the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, the commercial city of Lagos, and the vibrant city of Ibadan. While the second segment of the show is the headlines make around of Nigerian newspaper, and as usual, let's bring 4 newspapers to you every morning: the Punch newspaper, the Vanguard newspaper, the Guardian newspaper, and Nigerian Tribune. Where the last segment on the show is the details to the headlines. My name is SHAQEEROH AKINYEMI. And the first city I'm bringing on is the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. At 10 a.m. in Abuja this morning is cloudy with 25 degrees Celsius. At 11 a.m. is cloudy with 26 degrees Celsius. And at 12 p.m. is intermittent clouds with 27 degrees Celsius. At 1 p.m. is partly sunny with 28 degrees Celsius. And at 2 p.m. is partly sunny with 27 degrees Celsius. At 3 p.m. is partly sunny with 27 degrees Celsius. And at 4 p.m. is intermittent clouds with 26 degrees Celsius. At 5 p.m. is intermittent clouds with 25 degrees Celsius. And at 6 p.m. is mostly cloudy with showers with 24 degrees Celsius. At 7 p.m. is mostly cloudy with 23 degrees Celsius. And at 8 p.m. is partly cloudy with storms with 22 degrees Celsius. At 9 p.m. is mostly clear with 22 degrees Celsius. And at 10 p.m. is mostly clear with 22 degrees Celsius. At 11 p.m. is partly cloudy with 22 degrees Celsius. At 10 a.m. in the commercial city of Lagos this morning is rain with 27 degrees Celsius. At 11 a.m. is cloudy with 28 degrees Celsius. And at 12 p.m. is cloudy with 29 degrees Celsius. At 1 p.m. is rain with 29 degrees Celsius. And at 2 p.m. is rain with 29 degrees Celsius. At 3 p.m. is mostly cloudy with 29 degrees Celsius. And at 4 p.m. is mostly cloudy with 28 degrees Celsius. At 5 p.m. is mostly cloudy with 28 degrees Celsius. And at 6 p.m. is mostly cloudy with 28 degrees Celsius. At 7 p.m. is mostly cloudy with 27 degrees Celsius. Up until 8 p.m., 9 p.m. is cloudy with 27 degrees Celsius. At 10 p.m. is cloudy with 27 degrees Celsius. And at 11 p.m. is cloudy with 26 degrees Celsius.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Moving on to the last city on the first segment, which is the vibrant city of Ibadan, where we are streaming live from. At 10 a.m. in Ibadan this morning is rain with 27 degrees Celsius. At 11 a.m. is mostly cloudy with 28 degrees Celsius. And at 12 p.m. is cloudy with 29 degrees Celsius. At 1 p.m. is mostly cloudy with 30 degrees Celsius. And at 2 p.m. is mostly cloudy with 30 degrees Celsius. At 3 p.m. is thunderstorms with 29 degrees Celsius. And at 4 p.m. is cloudy with 27 degrees Celsius. At 5 p.m. is cloudy with 27 degrees Celsius. And at 6 p.m. is thunderstorms with 26 degrees Celsius. At 7 p.m. is cloudy with 25 degrees Celsius. And at 8 p.m. is cloudy with 24 degrees Celsius. At 9 p.m. it's cloudy with 24 degrees Celsius, and 10 p.m. it's cloudy with 23 degrees Celsius. At 11 p.m. it's cloudy with 23 degrees Celsius. So moving on to the second segment, which is the headlines make round of Nigerian newspaper, and the first newspaper is the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper, the latest story on the Punch newspaper this morning says 2027 opposition's place over NAS poll shifts plan, and page 2 has the details to that story. To that story that says NAS bill seeks to move presidential poll to November 2026. PDP and NPP alleged tenure extension. Plot ADC local government differ, and page 2 has the details to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Above the line of the Punch newspaper says, ASO strike ground varsity, federal government clamps down, and page 2 has the details to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Makinde wants Wike camp against stopping PDP conversion, and page 14 has the analysis to that story. The Punch newspaper says retired AIG lays probe into killings by Oshun Amotekun, and page 19 has the details to that story.
Audio Jungle. Slain husband's family slams Tinubu's pardon for Mariam Sanda, and page 18 has the details to that story. Punch newspaper, another story says Bodo maintains leads at 7.4 million complete online voters registration, and page 18 has the details to that story. Audio Jungle.
Rearrange kidnaps, kidnapping Evans over 2 cops murderer, and page 4 has the details to that story. And the last story on the Punch newspaper says Fubara swears in SSG cautions against power abuse, and page 19 has the analysis to that story.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Alright, so moving on to the Vanguard newspaper. The latest story on the Vanguard newspaper this morning is sport. It says FIFA 2026 World Cup qualifier, do or die clash, 3 teams, 1 chance. And page 6 and 7 has the details to that story. And there's one right there to that story that says Nigeria's face on knife edge, and page 6 and 7 has the details to that story. NNPC held order hike petrol price to 922 naira in Lagos, 955 naira in Abuja. In page 15 has the details of that story.
Audio Jungle. 9 p.m. 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 9 p.m.
Vanguard newspaper says federal government directs VCs to submit attendance. Compliance report as ASU strike begins. And page 8 has the details to that story. And there's one right out to that story that says you can't intimidate ASU with no work, no pay. NLC tells federal government. And page 8 has the details to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Tinubu Khan, more as Reverend Umar Okwai passes at 80. And page 5 has the details to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Says insecurity won't end with guns. Amici Walls. And page 26 has the details to that story.
Audio Jungle.
And the last story on the Vanguard newspaper says third Vanguard mental health summit to a mass crisis of addiction suicide. And page 5 has the details to that story. To the Guardian newspaper. The latest story on the Guardian newspaper says 72.64% of Nigerians' petrol imported hymns rivalry from new refineries. And page 6 has the details to that story. Says NAS proposed his November 2026 for the next general elections. And page 26 has the details to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Dangote warns against using monopoly claims to discourage local investments. And page 4 has the details to that story. Another story on the Vanguard newspaper saying defection. Makinde insists Nigerian hold ultimate verdict. And page 3 has the details to that story. Guardian newspaper, another story says Labour rallies into federal government. Also raved as strike grounds varsities nationwide. And page 6 has the details to that story. The Guardian newspaper says federal government's multi-billion naira FCT homes project excites judiciary. And page 29 has the details to that story. Nigerian Tribune says NAS proposes November 2026 for 2027 presidential governorship polls. And page 16 has the details to that story. And there are a lot of riders to that story. Want all election cases concluded before swearing in. Another rider says may make use of PVCs not mandatory. Criminalizes no stamping of ballot paper, result sheet, and the last rider says stakeholders back electronic transmission of results. And page 16 has the details to that stories. PDP caucus raises alarm over plots to truncate national convention. And page 15 has the details to that story. And there's one rider to that story that says 6 National Judicial Commission intervention defection, not particular to PDP, says Makinde. And page 15 has the details to that story. Governors, traditional rulers push for constitutional recognition of traditional institution. And page 3 has the details to that story. Federal government raises alarm over terror financing, smuggling. And page 4 has the details to that story.
Audio Jungle.
And there is one rider to that story that says security agencies cracks down on terror groups. And page 4 has the details to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Nigeria Tribune says drinking soft drink may fuel depression, particularly in women, says study. In page 5 has details to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Federal government directs VCs to implement no work no pay policy. And page 3 has the details to that story. Two riders to that story. More vertices join strike. And the last rider says we are not part of ASO strike, says Konwa. And page 3 has the details to that stories.
Audio Jungle.
Nigerian Tribune says Transcorp Power pulls 91.2 billion naira profit after tax with 38% revenue growth. And page 7 has the details to that story.
Audio Jungle. Story on Nigerian Tribune says how Trump broke historic Israel-Palestine pact to end Gaza conflict. And page 30 has the details to that story. Audio Jungle.
To the end of the second segment. Before we divert into the last segment, let's go on a break. Stay tuned, I'll be right back.
Audio Jungle.
City of Ibadan. For your next and upcoming event, whether marriage engagement, wedding reception, anniversaries, conferences, seminars, or birthday, the Ace Hotels and Conference Center is affordable and fully equipped with all imaginable ultra-modern facilities for your total convenience without headache, security, power, environment, parking space, and royal service by their staff. All roads lead to the Aces Hotel and Conference Center today at kilometer 2.5 Ijokodo Akbete Akufo Road, Akere, Ibadan. For booking and more information, call 080-8746-7420, 080-9744-1898, or 080-2869-0012. The Aces Hotels and Conference Center, where comfortability speaks in words.
Torí wọ́n jẹ́ ẹni tó ní bẹ̀rù Ọlọ́run lọ́kàn gidi gan ni. Ẹ bá wọn dòwò pọ̀ kẹ́ lè jàǹfààní wọn ni. Èmi Èjìrí Ọ̀kín ló ń kéde léyìí sí gbogbo etí ọmọ aráyé pátápátá. Ẹ jẹ́ bá FM dòwò pọ̀ ká lè sórí ire nítorí ẹni tá a bá ń fẹ́ l'Ẹlẹ́dùmarè máa fẹ́.
Gbogbo ará ilé èrò ọ̀nà ẹ wá gbọ́ o. MFM rédíò ni ẹ mọ́ gbọ́ lójoojúmọ́ nígbà gbogbo. Ìròyìn àsìkò lọ́lọ́kan-ò-jọ̀kan, eré ìdárayá, orin tó dùn gbọ́ sétí àtàwọn ètò tí ń kọ́ni lọ́gbọ́n. Ẹ gbọ́ wa kétékété lórí ayélujára wọ̀nyí, lórí Facebook àti MFM TV, lórí Twitter àti MFM TV, lórí Instagram àti MFM TV, pẹ̀lú YouTube àti MFM TV. Ilé ìtura The Ace àwọn tó lápẹ́tẹ́ nílùú Ìbàdàn lákàlẹ̀ sí o. Fún ìpolówó ọjà iléeṣẹ́ yín, ẹ lè pè wá sórí nọ́mbà wọ̀nyí o: 081591942 àti 47. Ẹ tún lè pè wá sórí aago yìí o: 080224841 pẹ̀lú 24 ni ẹ pè sí o. Mọ́mí àti dádì, ẹ̀dọ̀wọ́ MFM ni ẹ mọ́ gbọ́ lójoojúmọ́ nígbà gbogbo.
Àjànàkú kọjá mo rí nǹkan fìrí. Tá a bá rere ká wípé rere. Ìkànnì MFM Radio and TV. Ẹyẹ tí ó dorí kodò bí àdó òsì. Ẹ má yí kúrò ń bẹ̀ fún ìròyìn tí ò lábùlà. Ìròyìn eré ìdárayá, orin tó dùn gbá létí, àṣà, ẹ̀fẹ̀, ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣítí. Gbogbo tẹ́ ẹ fẹ́ gbọ́, gbogbo tẹ́ ẹ fẹ́ mọ̀ lójú kan ṣoṣo. Òun náà ló wà ní ìkànnì MFM Radio and TV. Àjà ló lẹ́rù ìwọ nìyẹn bá.
Ìgbà tó tó gbá ní í ṣe baálé ọba gbọ́migbọ́mi. Kọ̀ǹkọ̀ tó tún kọ̀ǹkọ̀ ní í ṣe ọba wọn lálẹ́ odò. Bó jẹ́ tìròyìn tó pójú owó, orin tó dùn gbọ́ létí, àṣà, ẹ̀fẹ̀ àtàwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣítí lọ́lọ́kanjọ̀kan. Ìkànnì MFM rédíò ọba ló jẹ́ láwùjọ rédíò.
So welcome back to the show. It's still from the newspaper. Don't forget you can watch us live on Facebook at MFM 97.3. And as you're watching us, do well to like, comment, and share. We are now in the last segment of From the Newspaper, which is the details to the headlines. And first story we're bringing on says, opposition's plates over NAS post-shift plan. A fresh bid by the National Assembly to shift the 2027 presidential and governorship elections to November 2026 has divided opposition parties. While some describe it as an attempt to extend President Bola Tinubu's stay in office, others agree it will be strengthening the Nigerian electoral system if properly implemented. The proposal passed by sweeping amendments to the 2022 Electoral Act seeks to move the election forward by about 6 months to allow pre- and post-election litigation to be concluded before the May 29, 2027 handover date. It is scaled through
The presidential and governorship election will be conducted in November 2026 instead of the traditional February or March date. The proposal forms part of the draft amendment to the 2022 Electoral Act, which stipulated that election for both offices must be held no matter than 185 days before the expiration of the incumbent tenure of the May 29. The analysis of the timeline showed that the counting 185 days backward from May 29, 2027 placed the proposed election date in November 2026, roughly 6 months earlier than the current schedule. Lawmakers said the adjustments would make the end practice of swearing in elected officials whose victories are still subject to the court dispute. The proposal followed a similar move in July, and lawmakers began pushing for constitutional amendment to allow elections, presidential, governorship election assembly, and state assembly to hold same day in 2027. At Monday joint public hearing, the House Committee of Electoral Matters, chaired by Adebayo Balogun, argued that moving the polls to November 2026 will help ensure all the manners of election, litigation, and depends within favor of swearing in of winners. Balogun said the goal was to create enough time for the resolution of election petitions, and the committee also proposed an amendment that will reduce the 180 days of tribunal judgment to 90 days. Nigerians eligible for earlier voting according to the proposal, including security personnel officials of the electoral commissions, accredited observers, journalists, and ad hoc staff of the commission. The proposed amendment also introduced mandatory electronic transmission of election results and make the use of permanent voters card non-compulsory. While the proposal has received backing forward INEC, would it describe it as a step forward, greater transparency and efficiency in the electoral process. Opposing parties remain divided over the motive and potential impact. In an exclusive interview with The Punch on Monday, the People Democratic Party Deputy National Youth Leader, Timothy Osadolo, accused the National Assembly for trying to buy more time for Tinubu. Similarly, the Nigerian Publicity Secretary of the New Nigeria People Party, Ladipo Johnson, warned that bringing the polls forward could not opposition at its disadvantage. Fubara swears in SSG caution against power abuse. Rivers State Governor Similayi Fubara on Monday saw him Benigbo Anambra as the new Secretary of the state government, urging him to discharge his duty honorably and avoid power abuse. Anambra appointed marked the first major appointment by Fubara since its restatement of following the lifting of 6-month emergency rule declared by the President Bola Tinubu on September 18. Anambra, a former minority leader in the Rivers State House of Assembly on platform of All Progressive Congress, also previously served as a commissioner for housing under the incumbent administration. He was among those screened by the former Factorial Speaker of the State Assembly, loyal to the governor, Victor Okojumbo. While congratulating the new SSSG, Fubara described the appointment as an act of divine favor. The government expressed confidence in Anambra's ability to perform nothing his past record of service. The Punch correspondent reported that Fubara's return to the governorship and coincided with a flurry of administrative changes of the governor consolidates his team. The appointment followed Fubara's reinstallment after months of political and legal turbulence at the lead to the suspension under the emergency rule declared by the President Tinubu. Tinubu had on March 18, 2025 declared a state of emergency in Rivers State, suspending the governorship, his deputy, and member of the House of Assembly. He cited a prolonged political crisis between Fubara and his predecessors and political benefactor Nyesom Wike as a ransom of the dramatic measure. In Fubara's place, the president appointed retired Vice Admiral Ibok Ete as the sole administrator with a mandate to restore political stability in the state. Upon submission of office, Ibok suspended all commissioners, special advisor, and assistants appointed by Fubara. He also dissolved the board and suspended head of parastatals he met in office. Since Ibok exited the state on September 18, the fate of Fubara appointees have remained uncertain. The Rivers State House of Assembly and its first sitting after the lifting of the emergency rule called on the governor to submit a fresh list of commissioners' nominees for the screening alongside the 2025 budget for passage. months week camps against stopping PDP convention, Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde has warned those attempting to disrupt preparation for the People's Democratic Party forthcoming national convention slot by November 15 and 16 in Ibadan, Oyo State, describing such efforts as an attempt to stop a moving train and act a link to a political suicide. Makinde, who spoke with a journalist on Monday shortly after inaugurating the PDP National Convention Transportation Subcommittee in Abuja, played that Oyo State would deliver the best convention in the party history. Following the model of internal turmoil within the PDP, several prominent politicians have aligned with the African Democratic Congress lead opposition coalition ahead of the 2027 general election. Those who have joined the coalition include former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, former Senate President David Mark, and ex-presidential aspirant Dele Momodu. At the same time, the ruling All Progressive Congress has attracted a number of PDP leaders, notably Akwa Ibom Governor Umu Eno, Delta State Governor Sheriff Oborevori, and the party's 2023 vice presidential candidate Ifeanyi Okowa. With the PDP National Elective Convention set to hold in Ibadan on November 15 and 16, there are indications that Enugu State Governor Peter Ngwa and Bayelsa State Governor Duye Diri might also defect to APC before the event. Meanwhile, allies of the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, have expressed dissatisfaction with the Omar Damagun lead National Working Committee, citing the grievance over the South-South zonal structure, party leadership in Cross River, Akwa Ibom, and Plateau State, as well as the convention microzoning arrangements. The group has warned that the convention may not proceed as planned unless the party revisits its decision. In a bid to reinforce their stance, they have reportedly taken steps to seek legal intervention to halt the convention. According to the T-Cable, the Federal High Court in Abuja last week declined the grant for interim orders threatening the PDP from holding the National Convention. Justice James Omotosho, in his ruling delivered on Thursday, dismissed an ex-party application filed by Wiki associates seeking to stop both Independent National Electoral Commission and the PDP forming proceeding with the schedule, leading meeting and convention. Responding to this attempt, Makinde, who serves as the chairman of the National Convention Transportation Subcommittee, affirmed that the event would proceed as planned. Makinde stated that the party remains unburdened by the defection, emphasizing that the final decision resides with the Nigerian people.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Another story says Lagos unveils community committee to tackle GBV. The Lagos State Government, through its Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, has inaugurated a Community Dialogue Committee, a strategic initiative aimed at strengthening grassroots efforts to prevent and respond to sexual and gender-based violence. Speaking in the inauguration ceremony on Monday, the Executive Secretary of DSVA, Mrs. Titilayo Divo Adeniyi, represented by the Community Engagement Officer, Mr. Adetotun Odumbo, described the initiative as a vital step forward building a sustainable community lead system to combat SGBV across the state. Lagos State has been a growing commitment in addressing sexual and gender-based violence through policy, advocacy, and institutional support. In a recent year, the Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency has led numerous awareness, campaigning and intervention aimed at the prevention, protection, and prosecution. Vivo Adeniyi said the primary objective of the CDV was to reinforce the community-level structure. She said the community-level structure would identify, response, and ensure appropriate referral of SGBV cases. According to her, the strategic approach aims to empower support system within local communities to ensure accessibility and effectiveness. The inauguration event convenes the approximately 50 representatives from Mushin local government and Odi Olowo local government council development area. She said the composition of the Community Dialogue Committee was designed to incorporate key community stakeholders, including respected international community and religious leaders. Also speaking, the head of the Community Engagement, DSVA, Mrs. Damilare Adewusi, said the role of the responsibility entrusted to the CDV member included facilitating community dialogue to raise awareness and address SGBV. claims of selling 14,000 hectares of land to 17-year-old. The Edo Geographic Information Service has dismissed reports claiming that a 17-year-old boy purchased 14,000 acres of land in the state. A viral post on social media alleged Governor Monday Okpebholo suspend the insurance of certificates of occupancy after a purported discovery. However, the agency, in a statement signed by its Director of Press, Tunde Ebiremole, on Monday, described the report as a false and mischievous. Ebiremole said no such transaction exists in the agency record. Noting that the 17-year-old legally a minor and cannot register land ownership under Edo law. Edo GIS urged the public to disregard the claims, which he said it was being circulated by individuals who allegedly spent large sums of money to spread misinformation. Okpebholo has its recent months taken step reform and administration in the state, including revocating of contracts with the private firms and previously managed the software for certificates of occupancy.
Audio Jungle.
Family slams Tinubu pardon for Mariam Sandra. The family of late Biliaminu Bello has condemned the presidential pardon granted to his wife, Mariam Sandra, who was convicted and sentenced to death for his murder. They described the move as the worst possible injustice any family could be made to go through. In a statement on Monday, Dr. Bello Mohammed, on his behalf of the family, said that the decision made by President Bola Tinubu to include Sandra among the 175 inmates recently pardoned under the Progressive of Mercy principle has reopened painful wounds that has barely healed. The family noted that Sandra, who was convicted by the FCT High Court on January 27, 2020, for the premeditated and cold-blooded murder of her husband, has shown no remorse even the fleeting moments throughout the saga. They record that the court judgment was upheld by the Court of Appeal on December 4, 2020, and later affirmed that the Supreme Court on October 27, 2023, saying the family has found some closure after justice served. The latest turn to events, coming just a few years after the disaster crime cruelly caused the short Biliaminu life, has however expectedly responded to the healing wound. The family expressed the deepened disappointment that, despite the gravity of the crime and painstaking judicial process, the federal government chose to extend the mercy on Sandra, allegedly following appeal from her family. Faulting the ground of appeal for Sandra, the family said she has driven her own children for their father's love and care. The family said President Bola Tinubu last week approved the release of 175 inmates serving various jail terms across the country under the Progressive of Mercy policy, which allowed the president to grant clemency of humanitarian ground. Sandra was one of those pardoned. She was convicted in 2020 after being found guilty of stabbing her husband, Biliaminu Bello, to death at their Abuja home on November 19, 2017.
Audio Jungle.
From the newspaper this morning says Tinubu mourns Labour activist Abiodun Aremo hails legacy. President Bola Tinubu has mourned the passing of veteran Labour artist and rights campaigner commander Abiodun Aremo. The Nigerian leader described Aremo as a steadfast defender for workers' rights and tireless advocate for social justice. Punch Online earlier reported that Aremo died on Sunday evening, October 12, 2025,